The sun hung low over the wide canyon, stretching its golden arms across the stone. Walls and scattering heat into the endless desert. Dust drifted through the air like floating embers, soft but scorching, a reminder that nothing in this land survived without a fight. Luke Harland, an experienced cowboy with a quiet gaze and a reputation for helping travelers caught in trouble, rode slowly along the narrow path that wound between the red rock cliffs. He had been tracking stolen horses since dawn, following their trail across half the territory, but the moment he heard the faint cry carried by the wind, everything else fell away. It wasn't loud. In fact, it was barely audible at all, but it was strained, pained, full of desperate will. Luke reined in his horse, listening again. The canyon echoed many sounds: wind, loose rocks, even the distant cry of hawks. But the second time he heard it, he knew it wasn't the land speaking. Someone was hurt. He dismounted quickly, tying the reins loosely so his horse could graze, and moved toward the sound. The path narrowed as he approached a cluster of fallen boulders. Something had collapsed recently, judging by the scattered dust and fresh cracks in the stone. He stepped carefully around the rubble, scanning the ground until he saw a hand, small, trembling, half covered by sand. "Hey!" he called gently as he rushed forward, dropping to his knees. With steady hands, he pushed aside the lighter rocks, brushing away dirt until he saw her face. A young Apache woman lay pinned beneath a slab of sandstone, her dark hair tangled across her cheeks, blood seeping from a cut on her shoulder. Her breathing was shallow, her lips pale from pain and exhaustion, but her eyes still burned with defiance. Before he touched her again, she lifted her head slightly and whispered in a voice that struggled between courage and agony, "Make it quick, cowboy. I won't scream." Luke froze, not because of the words, but because of what they revealed. She expected pain, perhaps even cruelty. She braced herself as if she believed she needed to fight him. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly, raising his hands so she could see them clearly. "I'm trying to help." She blinked slowly, her expression shifting as she studied his face. The rock trapping her leg was heavy, too heavy for him to lift alone. But leaving her was not an option. He moved around, examining angles, searching for leverage. "What's your name?" he asked, partly to distract her, partly to reassure her she wasn't alone. "Nayeli," she murmured, wincing as a shiver ran through her body. Luke nodded. "All right, Nayeli. We'll get you out." She opened her mouth as if to protest again, but her voice had weakened too much. Luke scouted the area, picking up a strong stick and a flatter stone he could use as a wedge. Every attempt to shift the heavy slab made the ground tremble, but he persisted, sweat trailing down his temple, dust coating his sleeves. Nayeli watched in silence, though he could see the pain etched deeply across her features. She bit her lip hard, refusing to cry out, but she wasn't unbreakable. When one attempt slipped and scraped across her injured leg, she gasped sharply, her hands tightening into fists. Luke knelt immediately. "I need you to breathe with me," he said, gently resting a hand near her shoulder without touching the wound. "Slow, in and out. You're doing well." Her eyes softened just a little. Not trust, not yet, but something closer to hope flickered through them. He returned to the rock, bracing the stick under a narrow crack while using the flat stone as a support. With a deep breath, he pushed down, muscles straining. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, finally, a soft grinding sound echoed as the massive slab shifted just enough. "Nayeli," he said, voice steadier than he felt. "When I lift, I need you to pull your leg back." She nodded weakly. He counted down from 3, gritted his teeth, and heaved upward with everything he had. The weight fought him viciously, as if the canyon itself refused to let go, but the slab tilted. "Now!" he yelled. Nayeli dragged her leg free, crying out despite her promise not to scream. But Luke didn't stop until her body was completely clear. The rock crashed back into place the moment he let go, dust billowing around them. Luke rushed to her side as she gasped for breath, trembling with the sudden release of pain. "You're all right," he murmured, checking her leg. It was bruised, scraped, but not shattered. She was lucky, though luck didn't feel like the right word in a desert that spared no one. He gave her water from his canteen, lifting it to her lips carefully. "Why were you out here alone?" he asked softly. Nayeli swallowed, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. "My brother," she whispered. We were hunting." The canyon shifted. Rocks fell. He tried to pull me out, but the rest started collapsing. I told him to run before the whole wall came down. Luke listened, understanding forming like a storm inside him. She had been protecting someone she loved. She had stayed strong because she had no choice. "We'll find him," he promised, adjusting his hat and preparing a temporary splint for her leg as he lifted her gently into his arms. Her head rested against his shoulder, not by choice but necessity. Yet a quiet sense of safety passed between them, fragile but real. The canyon walls rose around them, harsh and unforgiving, but Luke had made a silent vow. Whatever dangers lay ahead, he would get her out, and he would not fail her now. Luke carried Nayeli through the narrow canyon path, adjusting his steps carefully so each movement kept from jarring her injured leg. She was light, but exhaustion weighed heavily on her, and the heat only made things harder. Each breath she took came slow, strained, as though her strength threatened to leave her entirely. He paused beneath a sliver of shade, cast by an angled rock formation, and gently set her down, kneeling beside her. Her eyes fluttered open, still alert despite the pain. "You should leave me if it slows you," she whispered. Luke shook his head firmly. "I don't leave people behind." She studied him, searching for any hint of deception, but found only resolve. Once she regained a bit of breath, he helped her drink again and checked the hastily made splint. She winced as he tightened one of the bandages. "Sorry," he murmured. "Pain means you're still fighting." Nayeli gave a faint smile, the first sign of soft emotion breaking through her guarded exterior. The moment was brief but meaningful. With the sun beginning to dip and shadows stretching long across the canyon floor, Luke helped her to her feet. She leaned heavily on him, her arms slipping around his shoulders, her steps uneven but determined. Slowly they continued their trek. The deeper they moved into the canyon, the more Luke's instincts sharpened. Something felt wrong, not danger aimed at them, but tension in the land itself, as if the canyon carried memories of the rockfall that trapped Nayeli. He scanned every ridge, every loose stone overhead. "Your brother, what does he look like?" Luke asked, his voice low but steady. "Tall, brave, too stubborn," Nayeli replied with a weak laugh. "He'd never leave me behind unless he believed I was already dead." The sadness trembling beneath her words hit Luke harder than he expected. He squeezed her hand gently. "Then we'll show him he was wrong." They reached a ridge where the canyon widened, the view stretching into a flat clearing of dust and scattered shrubs. At first Luke saw nothing, but then he noticed a faint trail of footprints leading away from the collapsed rocks. "These look fresh," he said. Nayeli's grip tightened. "My brother." He must have circled around. They followed the prints carefully, Luke supporting nearly all of her weight as they moved forward. The prints led to a small outcropping overlooking a dry stream bed. And there, leaning against a fallen log, was a young Apache man, clutching his side, his face pale from blood loss. "Tawodi!" Nayeli cried, instantly trying to run forward despite her injury. Luke held her steady. "Easy, I've got you." Tawodi lifted his head slowly, disbelief washing over his features as he saw his sister alive. "Nayeli, how—" His voice cracked before he could finish. Luke helped her sit beside him, and the siblings embraced tightly, tears mixing with dust and relief. Luke stepped back, giving them space, scanning their surroundings to ensure nothing else threatened them. After a long moment, Tawodi looked up. "I thought she was gone." "The whole canyon shook. I tried to reach her, but—" He stopped, guilt clouding his expression. Luke knelt beside them. "She survived because she's strong," he said quietly. "And because she kept—" fighting until someone heard her. Nayeli squeezed her brother's hand. "You didn't leave me," she whispered. "You saved yourself to come back for me, I know." With both siblings injured, Luke quickly realized they wouldn't make it out before nightfall unless they found a safer route. Coyotes, snakes, and rapid temperature drops posed real risks. "We need shelter," he said. Tawodi nodded toward a nearby formation he had scouted earlier. "There's a small cave, enough to shield us from the cold." Supporting them both, though more slowly now, Luke managed to lead them toward the cave. Inside, he built a small fire using dried brush, its warm glow reflecting off the stone walls. The siblings rested close beside each other, exhaustion settling into their bones. As the fire crackled, Nayeli looked at Luke with a softness that hadn't been there before. "You saved me," she said. "You didn't even know me." Luke shook his head modestly. "People deserve help. Doesn't matter who they are. Out here, all we have is each other." Tawodi nodded in agreement. "You have our gratitude, Cowboy. And our respect." Luke smiled faintly, leaning back against the cave wall. letting the warmth seep into his tired muscles. The events of the day had worn at him, but beneath the fatigue was a quiet sense of purpose. Helping them hadn't been a choice. It had been the only right path. Hours passed and the fire dimmed. Nayeli, her head resting gently near her brother's arm, finally drifted into peaceful sleep. Luke remained awake a bit longer, listening to the whispering, whined outside the cave and reflecting on the strange way fate had woven their lives together. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, retrieving her brother's strength, finding their tribe, or returning to his own unfinished mission. But for now, he felt anchored in something real, something meaningful. The canyon had nearly taken a life that day, but it had also forged a bond between strangers who might never have crossed paths otherwise. Just before he allowed his eyes to close, he looked at the dark entrance of the cave as if addressing the unseen world beyond. Stories like this, he murmured to himself with a faint smile, remind people that courage still exists. And with that final thought, he let the night embrace him.